In this video, I'm going to show you how to train for pure sprint speed. I'm going to lay out the 4 crucial sprint training fundamentals that must be followed to maximize speed development, and I'm going to give some workout examples. This video is not about getting stronger. It's not about building power or stiffness. This video is about maximizing your pure speed gains during your sprint sessions. Chapter 1, the absolute fundamental to speed development. Have you ever wondered why you train a lot but never get faster? You're most likely missing the first base fundamental. This fundamental is called the SAID principle. Research shows that the most important thing for sprint performance is sprinting with something called max intent, which means you need to be sprinting above your 95% threshold. Max effort sprinting is the #1 way to develop speed for multiple reasons. Research shows it has the highest forces the body can possibly handle. Your glutes, quads, and calves are taking all the way up to 7 times your body weight in forces, and they are higher than anything that is seen in the weight room. And the velocity of sprinting is so high that no other exercise can possibly replicate it. But these explosiveness benefits are only seen when you sprint above 95% intensity or output. And to be more specific, you need to be sprinting at 97 to 100% intensity and output. For example, if your 40-yard is 5.0 seconds, then 100% of your speed is 5.0 seconds in the 40-yard. So if you sprinted and ran a time of 5.4 seconds, then that means you were fatigued and not able to reach your 95% threshold. And to your body, this is conditioning and not developing fast twitch fibers or any quality of explosiveness. Now, what if I told you that 90% of athletes are actually sprinting under this 95% threshold every session? But now this brings us to the exercises. There are 2 very simple and easy ways to get max intent and sprint above 95% of your output consistently. The first way is timed sprints. And I'm going to give you a list of a few great ways to do this consistently, from cheapest to most expensive. The #1 way to time your sprints for free is with your phone. But recording yourself and using the Photos apps or Coach's Eye is actually pretty accurate, usually within 0.1 to 0.3 seconds of accuracy. To do this iPhone setup, you need to set up 2 shoes or 2 cones. The first cone is where your starting line is. Then you want to measure out in steps around 10 to 40 yards. So measure it out to whatever distance you're going to be sprinting. Then set up the phone on the floor with a tripod or another shoe to record yourself sprinting from the start line to the finish line. And then when it comes to timing yourself, you want to go to the Photos app or Coach's Eye and then click the edit button. You're going to start the timer when the hips or the hands move the first time. Then you're going to end the timer when your hips pass the second cone. Then you're going to subtract the end time by the start time and write this down in your notes app consistently. That way you can track your time session to session to track if you're progressing month to month. The second portion is non-free but cheaper. Now, cheap is different to everybody, so don't take this as a disrespectful way. My #1 way for a cheap way to time yourself consistently is the Skills timing system. You can find this on Amazon or Dix, and most of my athletes on the Speed Academy are using this to time themselves during their training sessions. One of the other cheap options that is pretty solid is Jaku. To be fair, I got Jaku for free, but this video is not sponsored. I think Jaku is a great option for athletes who can afford it and want to get sprint times in small spaces. What's cool about Jaku is that essentially you're just putting on a watch and then you're setting up a phone and a different little tripod that comes with it. One of the cons of Jaku, besides that it drops your times, that it might not be the best option for upright sprinting like flying 10s. Flying 10s is a really important exercise for max velocity that we're going to cover later. Jaku doesn't really have a good way to test your flying 10s correctly. Another decently priced option is Dasher. Now we're going to get into the most expensive and best options. The #1 option is usually going to be the Freelap timing gate system. There's thousands of ways you can use Freelap, but just look up Freelap, see if the price range fits for you. It's around the $500 to $1,000 range, and it's easily one of the best ways. Next ones I like is GPS monitoring. They're essentially those GPS bras you see people like Les Spellman use. There's multiple brands you can get GPS monitoring for. They're not cheap. They're going to be $500 to $1,000. All these products ranging from $0 to most expensive are great ways to track your speed gains over time. The second way to get max intent, and probably the best way for most athletes, is racing. Have you ever wondered why most of the world records and personal bests happen at NFL combines and track meets? Well, there's multiple reasons, but one of the main reasons is adrenaline and the desire to win. This brings athletes well above the 95% threshold and helps them recruit max fast twitch muscle fibers. So in training, we want to compete or race 2 to 3 times per week, or at least 1 time per week, to ensure a balanced and consistent approach to your speed development. Now, the most common question I get is, what if your training partner or the person you're racing is significantly faster than you, significantly slower than you, or you guys are equal speed, but you don't have a third person to start you guys off the line? If your training partner and you are around equal speed, then just start on the line and have a desired distance to sprint around 10 to 40 yards. then search up on YouTube track and field ready, set, go, then click one of the most viewed videos to start it off, and then put the phone on the floor and get ready to race off that ready, set, go. If you have a friend who is slower than you, then have them start in front of you 5 to 20 yards. You guys should be almost equal by the end of the sprinting distance, and nobody should be blowing each other out by over 10 yards. If your training partner is faster than you, then start 5 to 20 yards in front of them and follow the same video ready, set, go process to start your guys' race off. Now that you know how to sprint with proper intent to even be in the ballpark for improvement, once you master the fundamental of volume, you'll get results like my athletes on the Speed Academy who used to struggle to get faster, and now he's breaking PRs every month. Part 2. Have you ever been told that hard work makes you better? Well, that applies to everything besides athleticism training. You see, there are multiple categories of sprint training, and the amount of volume you need to get better to stimulate them is less than you think. The categories I'm going to cover in this video is acceleration training, max velocity training, and speed endurance / top end speed training. Chapter 2, how to train for acceleration speed. These acceleration sprints are going to consist of shorter sprint distances, but higher overall volumes per session. This will be anywhere of 10 to 40 yards of max effort or time sprinting, and a total session volume of 80 to 250 yards of max effort sprints. As a general rule of thumb, you usually never want to go much past 8 to 10 max effort reps. And then the sweet spot for volume, in my opinion, is around 120 to 150 yards of total sprinting. Each rep needs to be max intent with around 1 to 2 minutes of rest per 10 yards covered in the sprint. It's common to see workouts from me programmed about 4 to 6 reps of 20 to 30 yards. Examples would be 6 times 20 yards as a workout, where you do 6 time sprints for 20 yards of distance with high rest between each rep, around 2 to 4 minutes. Getting in your volume there is crucial for sprinting faster. When an athlete can no longer apply horizontal force into the track, which again shows the monumental importance of powerful push while sprinting. Generally speaking, 20 to 50 meters represents the distance which an athlete can train acceleration, with novice and slower athletes using shorter distances here, and more advanced, faster athletes being able to utilize longer distances. And for acceleration sprint training, I would only do these sessions probably about 1 to 3 times per week. Now, there are 2 types of acceleration you need to develop in your training. Early acceleration applies to most team sport scenarios since it focuses on how fast you are in the first 1 to 5 steps. Late acceleration is more of a track and field focus, but it's still extremely important in sports like football, soccer, rugby, and baseball. If your goal is to target early acceleration, then keeping your sprints under 20 yards and doing more work in the 5 to 15 yard range will be good for you. Even if you don't hit the volume, as long as you're getting in around 6 to 10 max effort reps, this is also a good time to mention stuff like med ball sprints and heavier sled sprints around 20 to 50% body weight to overload the early acceleration qualities you need to be explosive. You can even do sprints that put you in deep positions and have a ton of spinal engine benefits, but also at a basic level, it just puts you in deeper shin angles. Some of the best versions of this would be push-up sprints, broad jumps into sprints, kneeling sprints, and even hill sprints. Now for late acceleration, anything after 15 yards to 30 to 50 yards is when people stop accelerating and we're hitting true top end speed or max velocity phase. Some alternative sprint variations I'd throw in here would be lighter sled sprints around 10 to 20% body weight, med ball jump sprints, bounds into short excel sprints, falling sprints, or drop in sprints. Now that you understand the basics of acceleration training, you need to improve your max velocity threshold to also improve your acceleration potential. Chapter 3. How to train for max velocity speed. This is the absolute fastest speed you could possibly hit. We want to do this in every sport, and we will primarily be training this with something called flying sprints. Flying sprints are a great tool for teaching athletes to improve their maximal running velocity, but the only way they work well is with a set of timing gates, which means we can stop those reps once we drop off in speed around 1 to 3%. You would probably only go backwards from adding in the extra volume, which can be measured when you time your sprints like we talked about earlier in this video. For upright sprints, you need much less volume than you think, around 4 to 10 reps of either 10 to 30 yard flies or 30 to 40 yard sprints. In terms of total volume session, it can be as little as 40 total yards, but usually we don't want to surpass 200 total yards of max effort upright sprints. Somewhere in the 120 to 150 yard range is the best. Now back to flying sprints. For the build up of the fly sprints, we want around 10 to 30 yards. If you're advanced, and by that I mean around 4.5 or sub 11 100 meter, then a farther sprint isn't a bad option.
around 40 to 60 yard time sprints or flying 30s is the farthest I'd go for max velocity development. A good example of what we do in the Speed Academy is just 4 times 10 yard flies with a 20 yard buildup, then 2 times 40 yard sprints, once again timed or raced. Also, for max velocity sprinting, I would only do these type of sessions 1 to 2 times per week.
Chapter 4, how to train for speed endurance, or what some people might call top end speed. Now you need to know not every single athlete needs this.
If you're a slow athlete, then there's no reason to add endurance if you have no speed. But if you're a track athlete who needs some speed endurance, then it might be worth adding this type of training as a 3rd sprint session per week. Speed endurance training refers to the maximal speed work where an athlete sprints to hold their maximum velocity to the point where they would typically start slowing down. Most athletes can only hold their max velocity for about 1 to 4 seconds. Generally, this training is how long athletes can hold their speed with little drop off. The sweet spot here, in my opinion, is around 25 seconds or less of max effort sprinting.
For speed endurance, I suggest doing
max effort sprints for longer distances around 60 to 150 meters. Push this out to 200 to 250 yards if you have some speed. All you need is max effort sprinting past 6 seconds with high rest. A good example of what I would program for my athletes who've done this and done this would be 3 to 5 times 150 meters max effort sprints with 6 to 8 minute rest between each set.
We don't want to be doing too much long sprinting because we're going to be developing poor mechanics, slow twitch muscle fibers, and beating down the athlete's nervous system.
And yes, this is one of the best or the number one way to develop endurance for soccer, football, basketball, and track and field 100 to 400 meter athletes.
Knowing how to do proper speed workouts based on the goal is important, but it doesn't really help if you don't have practical examples of how to program it like I do for my athletes who ran this. Have you ever wondered how many times you should sprint per week?
Well, this is the section where we cover it with a practical example. Most studies show that max effort sprinting 1 to 2 times per week is optimal for speed development, and 3 times per week can work for beginner athletes who are just naturally slower and can recover faster. But as you get faster, it becomes more of a nervous system demand to take on sprinting.
So in the Speed Academy, these are staple weekly setups and workouts we use for my athletes.
We usually sprint 2 times per week, once on Monday and once on Friday. This allows us to get an optimal acceleration session and an optimal max velocity session in. I'll give you 2 examples. You can do 6 times 20 yard sprints with 3 to 4 minute rest in between each rep, or you can do a resistance sled power circuit. 2 sets of 25% sled sprints followed by 1 set of a timed sprint. This workout will be around 120 to 200 yards of total sprinting, and all of it is max intent sprinting. Now for max velocity, we can do 4 times flying 10s with 3 to 4 minute rest between each rep. Then following that is an optional 1 to 2 reps of 40 yard sprints with 4 to 6 minute rest. If your time drops off by 1 to 3% in the flying 10s, then you probably don't need to do the 40 yard sprints. Now the 3rd sprint session per week is optional, but this is where I like to fit in either a technical day or a speed endurance day.
This is one of the most stimulating workouts possible, and these Speed Academy workouts have helped Gavin run this time in the 200 meter. Now that you know how to do proper sprint sessions, you're going to want to learn how to pair them with plyometrics to get the best results. So make sure you watch this video right here on a full guide on how to use plyometrics for speed.